Hello and welcome to the program. I am Suren. No matter how simple or extraordinary, some memories never fade, and they seem to be in the open all the time, as if painted deliberately for us to recall them in absolute clarity. It is the same when I walk the shore enjoying the salty air of the sea, crashing waves and waters. Splashing on the rocks, I found that by just being there, it is like a healing meditation. Here is one of those delightful memories. As we sat in the car watching the waves at Oliver's Hill, a section of Frankston foreshore, Rosemarie was in deep thought as she said, "It is amazing. It is now 2015, and when we first met, it was 1994. As usual, I was mesmerized with the ever-changing moods of the sea, but responded, "I think even before. We were reminiscing bygone days. We met on other occasions, such as Muriel's place, but yes, I will settle with 1994. But we never had the chance to say hello to each other when at Muriel's. In fact, Wendy Joy Clark used to behave as if she possessed me, often grabbing my hands and saying, 'I want to ask you something.' Shortly after, on her unwelcome demand, we had to go to the backyard where there were a couple of wooden seats. Sitting on one of them, she always tried holding and caressing my hands, despite my resistance trying to extricate them. Or she used to try and grab something else too. She attempted to do that several times, even when her daughter was in the van and I was seated in the middle of the front seat. I was sandwiched between the two, and immediately, as if it was an accidental touch, grabbing my private parts. She raised her voice excitedly. "Oh, sorry, I thought it was the gear stick." They both laughed, while her daughter exclaimed, "Oh, Mom!" I responded with, "Please let me get out. I need some fresh air." "Oh, no, I'll take you home." This was when I lived in Springvale. I remember years and years before I met you, and I went to one of those psychic readings, although I was very much a loner and liked living alone. I got told, said Rosemarie, "You are going to share a place with someone, and the place where this person actually lived was described to me." I was thinking, rubbish. No way, not possible. Funny, I was thinking the same. And see what happened? Many years later, you and I, both loners, preferring our own company, ended up sharing a place. Remember when I conducted art classes at the old cheese factory in Berwick? There was a certain woman by the name of Lola. I remember her with her daughter, and her daughter was so happily speaking about this art teacher who was such a kind man. I wish he was my dad. I heard Lola discreetly say, "Oh well, it can happen, my love. It can happen." Then she asked what I chose to do with my accommodation. Did I prefer to stay in Springwell or want to come their way? I told her I might think about it one day. Later I was bombarded by several estate agents calling to tell me, "We have this and the other house. And according to your wife..." Stop there for a moment. I have no wife here. My wife lives somewhere else. By that time, I had some idea about Magda living in Perth, but I didn't know any details and was certainly uninterested in knowing anything about it. One estate agent claimed, "Well, she said that you are just about ready to buy a house around here." I explained that it was not a definite decision on my part, and later went to their office in Berwick. And speaking to the young sales manager, I told him that I would let them know when ready to purchase a property. Another gentleman anxiously inquired, "But what are we going to tell your wife?" One realized that this lady was telling them things of no substance. And so I responded with, "We are not in a relationship, nor even related." She was so very keen that we lived together as a married couple. Her rich husband had several properties and held a very important job. He was either employed by a government department or was involved in some other business. She often said that he had everything but did not know what love was and how to love his family. I tried to brush her off for quite a while. I was puzzled about this anomaly. She really tried hard to get you to love her. She certainly did, I continued. Remember the other girl who taught art to a number of students, although not as many as in our classes? And in the old cheese factory wanted to have only one resident artist? I had already been asked to stay, but that young lady insisted that since I was a well-established artist and she needed this occupation so desperately, probably also hoping to have all my students as the only resident artist, she begged me to let her stay, and as you know, I did so with much regret. I hope she has got what she wanted and established herself as a professional artist. However, I doubt that she did. So it was our last time there. After a short pause, I continued talking about my memories of times past. Remember the time when Lola and her daughter came out with us after the last class, and we walked with Wilbur and others towards the car? This was when she asked me loudly for all to hear, "Is there any chance for us to get together? Any chance for us to get married?" reminding me of Margaret. I walked towards her and gently asked her not to raise her voice like that, and told her there was no chance of us marrying. I was not interested in marriage or a relationship with anyone, for I preferred my aloneness. No, I'm not going to get married. The word marriage alone scared me a lot, and just one experience in one's life was enough. Oh, she became agitated, angrily shouting and calling me with expletives, bastard, fucking asshole, and other curly words too ugly to mention. Wilbur laughed, asking, "What is that all about?" I know. He was standing there with me and mucking about. In fact, her daughter was walking with us and was so embarrassed. I thought so. The girl was extremely embarrassed. She obviously really loved her own father. It was only natural. And this thing with Lola saying, he doesn't show me love. Obviously, she doesn't show him love either. There are no two ways. It is a cause and effect world. The whole universe is based upon that law. One cannot just say, "Come and marry me." It does not work like that. It was certainly a very interesting last day at the old cheese factory. But I wonder if that other lass cut the legs from under herself. She had some students, but they were not happy. She was not doing too well, and obviously didn't want to have any competition. She actually told me that I knew if I said I was staying, she would be very devastated, probably cursing me forever. Even after her success or failures, she would still claim, "He was the reason for." I also remember that there was a young kid who showed great talent and willingness. She apparently got a scholarship and went to art school, and I have heard that her entire family was so very thankful for what I started with her. For the tuition and grounding you gave her, because your teaching is so different. It is not, "Thou shalt not do that." No, you should do that. It is wrong to do that. You encourage people to use their imagination. That is art. It is an inner expression of oneself in a creative way. Did we stop there during 1995, teaching at the cheese factory? No, it was later than that. Then it must be sometime in early 1996. Yes, I think so, because 1996 was when I joined your art class in January of that year, and you stopped later because you were going overseas. Yes, I went overseas with an idiot. It was 1996, and you moved to St. Kilda during 1997. East St. Kilda. It was the corner house on Oron Road and Dean's Avenue. I remember Wilbur used to pick you up from Springvale and take you to the cheese factory. But a couple of times he couldn't, and so I picked you up instead. But one day, when you were going with Wilbur, and it was pelting down with rain, I was driving along the Princess Highway, and my windscreen wipers gave up on me, and so I was peering through the rain, soaked windscreen. I pulled into a service station, and I found, after calling the RACV for me, that it was the motor, and I had to get a replacement for it. But that was all right. It got fixed. 1997 was the year when you moved into East St. Kilda. I think it was in August. I believe so. It was after you moved there that you ceased your meditation groups at Jones and Doreen and Jerry's. We started a new program in Orang Road. For a while, apart from our usual grouping, our meditations with the chosen elite used to drain me heavily. Although I was in a deep trance, utilizing self-hypnosis, whoever was channeling their wisdom through me, or perhaps it was my subconscious talking, I could not be too certain, and after about an hour or 40 minutes, I used to come out of it feeling mentally exhausted and completely drained. In normal circumstances, I was always fully relaxed and content after my waking up. Those people were there because he told them to be there, said Rosemarie. He obviously had something on them and told them, you go, and they did exactly that. The only one that came around was Ross. Ross woke up to things. I smiled as I spoke. He was told to become his accountant at the bank. But he was not an accountant. He was a banker. Damon introduced him to me by those titles, yet he had an accountant elsewhere. Interestingly, they all seemed to worship their boss. Obviously, he was giving them something as a result of what was being sold, probably on street corners, through his boys, as he called them, through which they were making big money. How else were they to become richer? Was it through another illegal activity or truly honest work? Unfortunately, not all great wealth is obtained through absolute honesty. Furthermore, as you know, the place where I lived at the time was bugged. Why had he seen it necessary to do something like that? After a brief pause, I continued. After our meditation we enjoyed with Wilbur, Joan, and you, there was a very specific phrase used. My beloved. And that came back in a phone call straight away. Oh, my beloved. Later, I discovered that he was getting inspired that morning in his shower. One other time, when you were at my place and we were going to do some typing, even before started, he came to pick me up in his BMW so that we could go to lunch in St. Kilda. because he wanted to have his usual raw steak and olive oil with balsamic vinegar to dip his bread. Just like previous times. When we went to Siena on Chapel Street, when I entered his car, your voice was singing through his speakers. He, as usual, had his mobile phone to his ear as if he was talking to somebody, pretending. He probably considered a dummy like me would not have a clue. On the other hand, he could not comprehend the importance of my input when you typed the manuscript, often telling me that Rosemarie could do it by herself, couldn't she? This was to delay the possible outcome of the book we wanted to publish then. The thing is, I used to sing in ancient Polynesian, said Rosemarie, and it was so obvious that he gave himself away. I am sure he even had a camera set up. I said, I don't know, but why did he want to do that? Why spy on me? Because he wanted to control you, and he could not understand that you can't be controlled. That is when he really pushed it. Look, when you came back from that trip, you had already told him you needed time for yourself. Yet he turned up outside Doreen and Jerry's. Fortunately, Christine had seen him parked around the corner and said he had got a gun. And so she had driven around and told us about it, and then left. He turned up, insisting that he must see you. Like the others, I told him he's not here. No, he's not here. Finally, he said, I am going to kill him. That was exactly what we had to have him say. And now we could get that restraining order against him. I couldn't do it alone, but we needed to protect you. As you know, I said, he was totally hateful towards you, Rosemarie. In fact, during the last days at Orong Road and several other times while you were traveling to visit me, there were some attempts to run you over. He later admitted, in his own words, in a very puzzling manner, but you don't need her in your life, do you? Professore? Who is she anyway? I can remember when sitting there in your place, and it was a good thing that we both had drama training. You were on one corner, and I was on the other, and we were having a special conversation, knowing he was listening in, and we were making it sound very intimate, without being intimately intimate. I thought it was funny, said Rosemarie. I laughed and said, he later told me, I think, Professore, you are in love with Rosemarie. When you moved out from there, you were looking for a house to accommodate yourself. And I was looking for somewhere else to rent when I lived in Noble Park, and thought rents were so expensive. If we got somewhere that had a bungalow with it, I could take the bungalow and you could have the other part. We decided that because it had actually got to that point where he overstepped the mark and you put your foot down. I certainly did. when in Orang Road, I remember him calling me on the phone saying, you know, last time, yesterday, you were channeling. You were not really channeling. Professore, come clean. You were not channeling. It was not serapisi. There was nobody there. It was you just talking. I know what I know. When I asked questions, you answered me as you. You were not channeling. It was all just bullshit, I think. Just come clean, Professore. Just come clean. I told him that I try different methods sometimes, like other channelers. But I don't tell bullshit. I was using the art of psychology. One can clearly understand that I was petrified due to the signs observed in him that he might shoot me if I was in deep trance. I did not want to step on thin ice. Although my first deep trance channelings were exactly as normally expected after my psychoanalysis of his person, I could not trust. I could not trust his mood swings, and indeed my so-called channeling had to be conscious channeling, for I needed to be fully alert. As I have already made mention of my experiences when in Perth, I could have done the same with my alleged channeling, but in his presence, I needed to be extremely cautious. If you are in deep trance, said Rosemarie, he might just kill you. And then, for it could be expected from a criminally minded person like him. He did not give me any reason to feel differently. You need to have protection. You have got to be aware at all times. As you know, when you are in deep trance, if someone touches you, the shock alone can kill, and it has happened to other people before. I know. I could not trust those sorts of people. I didn't trust him, full stop. When he called me during the following day to tell me to come clean, I raised my voice for the first time to him, as he once asked me why I never shouted at people like he did, often swearing. You know, Professore, you never raise your voice, never use fuck words, as we always do, just for laughing. Always talking normal. That is the way I am. But that morning, when answering his call, I raised my voice and told him, this is a fucking bullshit, and I am no longer going along with it. Take it or leave it. I am not going to put up with your shit and your stupidity. Do you really think you can control everybody and their lives? If you carry on like that, I'm telling you, if you think I will obey you, you are wrong. You are nothing to me. He didn't like it, one iota. Professore, we are now at war. That was said when he called me the following day. One of us has to go, furthered his supreme wisdom. I responded with, I'll be going very shortly. But when? I said, very shortly. 3 months, I added. Within the month, I will leave. I needed to give myself some time. Okay, he said. Within the month, take everything that is yours and leave just an empty house. Just as recorded. I was going to do exactly that anyway, but a week later he called me saying, I spoke to my accountant. My accountant says you should leave everything behind you, including your clothing, and just go naked, Professore. I did not answer him, but put the telephone down and called his accountant immediately. I could only speak to his accountant's secretary, and she informed me that he had dissolved our supposed business partnership. Advising me, she said that if she was in my position, she'd just leave them all and not worry about that character. Go and live your own life. I responded to her with, thank you. I understand what you mean. Good luck, she said. Good luck to you. Then Joan, Brad, Kevin, and I helped you pack up stuff and cleaned the place. Although his boys were watching the house all the time, he didn't realize you knew, and keeping the house seemingly occupied, said Rosemarie. I stayed there while you were whisked away, unobtrusively, without it being noticed. I remember that very well. But we did the move. We put your big stuff in storage and you went to Jones. That was in the August. That's right. 1999. In October 1999, you found the place in Honora Crescent, Mulgrave. What was the number, do you recall? Oh, I think it was 40-something. And we ended up living there for a while. It was a very dusty place and was supposedly noiseless. Remember how when the owner, a Lebanese or Middle Eastern woman, came to visit, standing in the kitchen after ordering me to close the glass sliding door, exclaimed how silent the place was, yet it was very noisy. Sounds coming from the nearby highway. A little later, she wanted to inspect the place with the estate agent, just to be extremely critical. Oh my God! The place is so dusty and so dirty, with animal food all around. One of the bedrooms is very smelly. It is not acceptable. How you can live like this? My place is for humans to dwell, not for animals, and not to be turned into a rubbish tip. But it was not a rubbish tip, said Rosemarie. Far from it. It was very dusty, but it was not down to us. Ah, but it was her excuse. Remember what she was telling you? It's a pity that you are not one of us. Yes, she did say that to me. Once she said that to you, she went the other way on it. Yes, she did. It was 2005, and it was nice that we had a tiny shopping center just around the corner. Remember? It was a very hard time for us. We had to struggle with a trolley when shopping, said Rosemary, and walking or public transport, carrying our shopping home, was very hard. I was doing lots of filming, if you remember, I continued, even at the back, by the highway, where they used to do target shooting, archery. I remember filming lots of galas on flight and on the ground, feeding. There were flocks of them, and they never ran away from me. It was perhaps my only fun, apart from the meditations we conducted there. Kevin and Carol, Martin and friends, Joan, Wilbur, Brad, the kickboxer, and his wife. It was an interesting group. I remember the dark brown velvet curtain on one side in front of which was our dining table. We conducted many photographic experiments. This is also when I experimented with infrared photography. And that was my only entertainment in those days. We used to do most of our shopping in Dandenong, continued Rosemary, and could not carry everything on the bus, and the timetable was lousy. Therefore, we had to take taxis, often waiting for as much as 3 hours. Remember your sister visiting us occasionally? And with your niece, Edwina? She attempted to draw with us. Edwina wanted to learn how to draw figures, and she used to come around on a weekly basis. Mickey joined us, and you told Edwina and me to draw her portrait, but it didn't turn out anything like her. I think she was still happy about it. Do you remember when I had some German Limburger cheese with a beautiful smell and pumpernickel bread, for I felt a little hungry? You were looking curiously in her direction. Trust you. And Mickey said, yes, I like that. Being Mickey, she had to try it. Remember, she used to say that a little bit of everything is good for you. She was game. She tried everything. Initially, it was a shock to the system. But afterwards, she said she would have it again. Yes, I know. We used to go out with her and her friend Helen Bird. Then in 2005, we moved to Endeavour Hills, and the little shopping center I spoke about was not the one around Anora Crescent. It was the Heatherton Road shopping center. But we also had a small shopping area just around the corner, close to Anora Crescent. Although we used to go to Dandenong most of the time. The other one was really for emergency. Remember a gentleman whose both eyes were blinded after a car accident? He was born with normal eyesight until that accident, and doctors were trying a new technology by attaching it at the back of his skull to enable him to see digital images. Actually, recently they were talking about another one, said Rosemary, where they put a chip in the eye. This was in the States, reported in a program called The Doctors. And the woman, from not being able to see anything clearly, was able to see. Before, she could not recognize a face as a face without any details. But by wearing special glasses, she now could. This was a genetic problem, and her son also suffers from the same. Seeing how this worked for his mother, it gave him hope. I believe there will be more advancements in medical science. And I would really like to be around to see it happen, even if it has nothing to do with my own health. Anyway, we moved to Andover Hills. It was in July, sometime, wasn't it? Oh, it was in August, I think. No, it must have been June or July. The month of August was when you moved out from St. Kilda, and in October we moved to Mulgrave from Jones, and then we moved to Heatherton Road, Andover Hills. That was 2005. We were there for a couple of years, said Rosemary. That was an interesting place, and I was in a terrible state, health-wise. In fact, believe it or not, and this is not superstition, whenever I used to go to bed, I almost always felt the presence of an old guy laying in my bed and dying. I used to feel scared and disgusted. I often took myself out with a chair in that corridor-like area next to the carport. Ah, the little veranda. I was really breathless, apart from going through a lot of infections with my urinary tract. I remember that once when you went to lunch with Ross, you told him you needed to go to the hospital urgently as you had a big problem, but instead he brought you back home to Andover Hills. It was good that Jeff had given me Mickey's car, and I took you to Dandenong Hospital. Remember? Yeah, I remember it so very well because I could have died with kidney failure and was so desperate running into the emergency department while you parked the car. Remember that? When in there, a certain doctor, I believe who was English, said we needed to do something immediately and instructed the nurse who was there for work experience and happened to be a Malaysian Muslim girl, fully covered from top to toe like a cabbage, saying she could not do that, what the doctor asked her to because her religious convictions. I dare not touch a man, she softly exclaimed, forcing me to tell her, I know you can't. Better ask your boss, the doctor, to see me. I told him that the girl, being Muslim, could not do what she had been asked. He said that she should not therefore be in this profession, and he did the necessary procedure, attaching a bag to empty a huge amount of urine, which could have had fatal consequences if not emptied immediately. I had to wear a bag for a long while, occasionally causing infections in the bladder. From then on, I was often going to Damon Hospital for tests and further treatment. Initially, they referred you to Casey Hospital in Berwick, then to Clayton, and you ended up going to Monash and to the one in Bentley. I remember that, and also my GP referred me to Columbus, a private urologist. Oh yes, you had, he gave me a few very strong painkillers, and when he inserted the probe, the nurse heavily leaned on me so that I wouldn't jump while they took biopsies. It was very painful. In anatomy, I had learned that certain parts of the body, due to a lack of nerves, would not hurt. But those little needles coming out of the probe pierced through the intestine and other organs made it very painful. And I felt it all. Remember, there was no anesthetic used. Later he told me that so far there was no sign of cancer, although it was very likely to develop into it. My prostate was like a large orange. You are most certainly heading towards an episode of cancer, the doctor said to me, but we need to continue with regular checkups and see what your PSA levels are doing. If it increases from 8 to 9, it is time to decide for suitable treatment, he advised. But at least we didn't need to go back to Columbus as we were going through the hospital system, which I believe was better for you, said Rosemarie, in regard to further tests. It was also interesting as we had to leave Heatherton Road, where the owners were yet another Muslim family. Oh goodness, I remember that. How strange it was that our forced move had to be at a time of my going through health-related problems. They wanted to have the place for their relations who were coming over. I think they were Pakistani or Indian. This was also the time, I continued, when I was filming Shannon and Kevin's engagement, and I could no longer pass water. It was followed by a TURP, T-U-R-P, operation, when they had to remove a blockage from the prostate into the bladder. For a short period of time, I had no episodes, while still keeping an eye on developments. Rosemarie continued. And so we went from there and had a hell of a job trying to find somewhere to live. That was a time when rental properties were as rare as hen's teeth. We had to travel all over the place and finally found 2 properties in Frankston, one of which we really liked. Yes, it was beautiful. That was in August. The estate agents told us that we were accepted for both of these properties, but the owners of the one really liked, we liked, were going to put it on the market in December That was a nightmare of a trip. And in the meantime, chasing around was not good for either of us. When we were at Frankston, in Lorraine Street, as you were watching the news on television, you saw that the house we previously lived in was raided by the police for drugs. I remember that so well. It felt so strange. It is quite a shock for the system when you see something like that and say, I used to live there. They probably thought that they could secretly grow stuff where the grove went down, but it did not work, did it? They had been seen and they got caught. As for Lorraine Street, you called it an animal shelter. I believe it was a farm once upon a time, and they used the place as an animal shelter. They apparently turned it into a tourist's overnight stay or holiday house. Later it was extended and remained empty for a very, very long time. They evicted the people living there because of drugs and trouble with the police. When you were in the garden, you were still finding needles and things mixed up with kids' toys. Inside the fireplace and chimney, there were illegal videotapes. Some were kind of homosexually oriented. The federal police recommended that I destroy them. There had also been a number of police raids there. I think you were doing a part-time job at one time and I was home filming a few mind-over-matter experiments just behind the door. There was a knock at the door by the detective and his companion while I was trying to film, demonstrating levitation in front of the camera. I think you have seen that video. The detectives urgently knocked, and when I answered them, hesitantly, they asked me several times for my name. They informed me about a drug issue there, which left me quite puzzled, but I kept filming my experiment. Remember that floating apple? There was something strange going on when I made that clip. I also had my final operation for prostate cancer around 4 years ago, was it not? It must be. That was about 2010 or 2010-ish. It was very strange. Not as funny for you though. For when I took you there, they said you were going to be there for about a week and taking patrol and parking fees into consideration. The next day I decided to go by train and bus. I was about to step off the bus at the hospital when you called and said, "I'm coming home." I reacted, "What?" I flew in to see you, then flew back out and just missed the bus, just missed the train. I finally arrived home and got in the car, but Emma wouldn't start until I said, "We are going to pick Daddy up." Then she started immediately. And vroom, she was off. So you were ready and waiting the day after, much to their surprise, whereas they had told us it would be 5 to 7 days before you were ready to go home. I will present the rest by the next episode. In the meantime, keep well, keep smiling, and be happy. Thank you for watching.